Thanks, Alex.
1 year after President Obama and CIA Director John Brennan said that major reforms were coming to the nation's drone program and that the CIA was getting out of the paramilitary business, it appears that little has changed. That is the assessment of the New York Times, which reports today that the CIA is still completely in charge of drone strikes and other covert programs, and it could be at the expense of the nation's intelligence. Joining me now, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff, member of the Intelligence Committee and Appropriations Committee, and a good friend to this broadcast. Welcome, sir. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
So this article, as you know, this cites several reasons why little has changed. There's turf fights, the fact that the CIA may be just better at drones than the Pentagon, and that foreign governments, they don't want the U.S. military operating in their backyards. Was all the talk last year just lip service, or did the administration not anticipate these problems?
I don't think it was just lip service. I think the administration really does want the Defense Department to be handling military operations. And that really makes sense. It makes sense because the military can do its core mission. Intelligence agencies, as Director Brennan has said, he wants focused on the intelligence gathering mission. So from the point of division responsibility, it really makes sense to have the Department of Defense doing all of these military operations. There are bureaucratic delays in transitioning to only DOD, but I hope those can be overcome, and I hope we can be more transparent about the program as well. I've introduced a bill to require an annual accounting of how many civilians and how many combatants are killed so that we can not only hold ourselves to the standard we've set of no civilian or to a near certainty of no civilian casualties, but also because we're not going to be the only country that employs this technology in the future. It's important that we set a high example.
And that bill that you've introduced, I believe, has a 5-year retroactive angle to it, so you can actually assess what we've done and sort of see a pattern. I want to take a look at the op-ed that you wrote. It was a really good one in the New York Times, and it's titled, "Let the Military Run Drone Warfare." You put it in there about a month ago. Military drone strikes have been accused of numerous civilian casualties, as you've mentioned. There was that wedding procession as well in Yemen back in December. So can they really handle it?
Well, you know, a lot of the claims, and I can't speak to any particular strike, a lot of the claims our adversaries use for propaganda purposes and always claim that there were civilian casualties or always claim it was a wedding. So you can't accept at face value what the Taliban may say or others. Nonetheless, there have been civilian casualties, and when there are, it's devastating. And our personnel really make every effort to try to eliminate that possibility. But that's never going to be perfectly possible, which is why this has been, I think, tactically a very important tool in taking militants off the battlefield. But strategically, in terms of the bigger picture, it's been a mixed bag because when we do have civilian casualties, it can generate a lot of animosity towards the United States by the family members of those who were lost, as you might imagine.
Yeah, but you know, as I look at this op-ed that you wrote, you had to explain to someone that you had met, Mr. Faisal bin al-Jaber, a Yemeni civil engineer, how come 2 of his family members were killed in a drone strike. And what did you say to him?
Well, it was very hard because actually I couldn't tell him exactly what happened to his family members. It's not something I'm able to disclose, and it's not something our government has disclosed. And so it's very difficult. He had family members that were lost. He's asking for answers. He also came to Washington to put a very human face on those numbers, on those statistics, which can become impersonal when they're looked at in the aggregate. So I think it was very important to have a chance to talk to people who are affected that way. And I think he recognizes, as many do, that there are some really bad actors where this is an important tool. And we don't want to risk American lives trying to put them in these dangerous places where arrest or capture is simply not feasible. But nonetheless, when it's a member of your family, as it was his, that's in the wrong place at the wrong time, reportedly, that's a very painful and difficult thing.
John Brennan has said that the CIA's focus on drones has come at a time at the detriment of actual spying. The most recent example of that is that the U.S. was apparently surprised by Russia's annexation of Crimea. I know you just returned from Ukraine this week. What did you find when you got there?
Well, obviously a very tense situation with tens of thousands of Russian troops outside the country. and of course Russian clandestine forces working inside Ukraine to destabilize the population. Very sophisticated Russian propaganda, very sophisticated efforts to try to agitate the population in those eastern regions to provoke violence so that they can justify potentially further military action. I'm very concerned, Alex, that the sanctions we put in place thus far really haven't been enough to deter Russia. And what's more, we look at other countries around the world. China, for example, is watching what we do, watching how much we stand up for that, the assurances we gave as a part of that Budapest memorandum when Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons. And Japan is looking at this as well in terms of deciding what kind of a military it needs to build and how it can rely on the United States or not rely on the United States.
But the fact that you sort of called for more sanctions on Russia, is it a bit dangerous to try to isolate an economy of that size that also holds a seat on the UN Security Council? In other words, we have to work with Russia for the greater good, often through the UN Security Council.
That's true, but I think really at this point the greater danger is failing to act strongly enough and encourage further Russian belligerence. There's only one thing I think Putin respects, and that's strength. And unless we show strength here, I think he'll be encouraged in places like Moldova or other parts of Ukraine or elsewhere to aggrandize Russia at the expense of the territorial integrity of Russia's neighbors. So I think the greater risk at this point is doing too little, not doing too much. It's true we're going to need to work with Russia on the situations like Syria and Iran, but Russia will do what's in Russia's interest to do, regardless of how we respond in Ukraine. And I think a strong, very strong response is really required here.
Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff, always a pleasure. Thanks so much.